If you're old enough to remember when phones had cords and the only thing that went viral was a cold, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Big 6-0 with Kaylee Harris and Guy Rawlinson. Because who better to discuss life's second act than two people who still think mature is a type of cheese?
Hello, my friend.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm ready for another podcast. We've come up with an idea for this particular episode that involves around jobs and stuff that don't exist anymore.
Well, my job doesn't exist anymore.
What was your job?
Probably being a father.
Yeah.
My kids don't want to. No, they don't. They love me. They love me. I was going to say.
You know what got me thinking about this one was my first job I got was working. They used to have. Do you remember microfilm processors, like microfilm machines, where somehow they used to be able to store documents in them, but they had to go into the machine, be photographed, and then somehow they'd get stored. One of my first jobs when I was 15 was I had to sit on the floor in this office with an iron and a towel, and I had to iron the bits of paper so they could be fed into the microprocessing machine. Now, the iron had to be pretty hot, and the smoke that used to come off these documents with the ink and everything. I lasted, I think, 2 hours, and I had a splitting headache, and I just got up and walked out and went home. And I was like, I remember saying to my dad, I can't do that job. I can't sit there and iron paper all day.
There's so much wrong with all that story.
I know, right? I know, but it just got me thinking about microfilm processes and how we. And another job I had when I was 16 was working at a radio station, putting all the names of all the records and everything into a computer, a very, very early computer, so that we had on the computer all the names of all the records that we had, as well as physical copies of them, because up until that point I think everything was like a card system.
Yeah, but you weren't sitting on the floor, a young woman sitting on the floor with a towel and a hot iron, breathing in toxic fumes. That's
And
Not quite
I think it got to like 10:30 and I'm like, I can't do this, and I was too scared to tell the boss that I didn't. It was my first day and I didn't want to do it, so I just went out for a break and then just jumped in the train and went home.
Well, there goes your superannuation payout from that job, right? Did you do the search to see whether you're eligible for any super from that job?
No, I don't think super was even a thing then.
Probably, and that's probably something that doesn't exist anymore either, really, is it? The old super payments from back in the day.
That's right, yeah. So
but you used to categorise what from cards when you moved to the radio station to actually type in bloody thing. Yeah, really?
So you type in the Beach Boys and then the song and then how long it went for into the computer, how long was the intro, from when the music starts to when the vocals actually kick in. You'd have to put all that information in.
Wow.
What
and
the
that was
job. Yeah, getting it all onto computer,
All those jobs that, I mean, there's a multitude of them. We're probably only tip of the iceberg. But I remember when we used to have a tea lady.
Yes, I was a tea lady at a job.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
With a little trolley? Did you have a trolley?
Yes, I had a trolley. I worked in an office in Sydney, and for an accounting firm, I think was one of my first jobs. It sounds like I had a lot of first jobs, didn't I? But anyway, that was around that period, 16, 15, something like that. And I got a job as the tea lady, and I would go around and what would you like? And I had a trolley, and
You got to meet everyone in the office and knew what their white tea with one sugar and
what everyone had, and you'd push your trolley around. What about where you worked? Did you have tea ladies?
We had it. I thought it was the best thing ever. I'd had a couple of jobs before I moved to this particular place, and I'd just been working at Channel 7 in Sydney in the newsroom there. We didn't have a tea lady there, but the next job I moved to, yes, this lady came along with the trolley, and she needed to know your name because you were the new kid on the block. And how did you have your tea or your coffee? And did you wanted? I think we even had cream biscuits. I mean, we didn't even just have the milk.
Nice.
But I was only there probably 3 months, and they sort of got rid of the tea lady. It was that transition time where tea ladies were a thing of the past, and so I got to experience 3 months of the tea lady and the trolley.
Yeah. Well,
But
I worked at an, 2UW in the 1980s. I started in the early 80s, and we had a tea lady, and she was a lovely Greek lady called Rula, and
nice.
she would come around and she had the lovely Greek accent, and she'd lecture all of us girls about the dangers of smoking because back in those days you had your cigarettes and your ashtray on your desk. And she'd go, "You girls, you should." I can't do a Greek accent, but she would, have a go at us and bring us our tea. But she was lovely. I loved Rula. She knew everything going on in the office. She knew all the gossip. She knew what everyone was doing. It was lovely.
I'm glad that politicism kicked in there and you decided not to try and do a Greek accent to stereotype anyone of our
Exactly.
listeners or friends who may actually be of Greek descent. So
Exactly.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's probably why you had a lot
You're
of first
welcome.
jobs, because you were out the door by 5 o'clock that day.
That's right. Right. They only ever lasted a week at the most. Yeah.
But there are great jobs that just don't exist anymore. And there's one that, look, I shouldn't start with this one, but there's one that would just have my kids scratching their head and say, "You are kidding me."
Yeah.
And I'll use a colloquialism, but there used to be the dunny man
Oh,
who
yes.
used to come around in
Yeah.
unsuited sort of, and he would they'd come around, and it was like a long drop or a short drop or whatever you call it, and he used to
Yeah.
come and collect.
Yeah, you'd have your toilet in the backyard, and
Yes.
he would come to the back, and he would how I don't even know how it worked.
Well, there used to
How
be.
did
I
they
mean,
get down in there and clean it?
well,
Or
it
empty?
used to be like a big tin, like a big
Oh, he'd just take the
tin,
tin away.
and he'd take the tin on the shoulder and go and empty it into the truck and give you a new tin, and
Oh my
thinking,
God, I have so much respect for those people.
can you believe that? I mean, they're in the days
Oh,
of.
no.
I mean, you talk about recycling these days. I mean, that's the ultimate piece of recycling, isn't it? I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, here we'll take your toilet away and we'll put in the new tin and off you go, mate.
But can
So
you imagine if you were a kid at school and then some kid said, "What does your dad do?" You'd be really embarrassed, wouldn't you, to say that that's what your dad did? But what an incredible job.
incredible job, and I guess in some places it still existed up until probably 30 years ago, and I'm sure where there was
Yeah.
still no sewer, and they probably had what do you call it, septic tanks that still needed to be emptied. But those old long drops or short, I'm not sure which one's which.
I don't know.
They still had the truck that would come around, and the
Hmm.
dunny man, and that was the colloquialism, would come along and empty. And I don't know how you would do that day in, day out. I
Yeah.
really wouldn't.
Well, there's a whole scope there for people who used to come to your house, like the man before refrigerators, the ice man used to come and bring a massive big block of ice that would go into your ice. What was it called?
The ice
Where
box
your
or
ice went.
whatever it is.
Ice box. There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah.
And even the milkman.
Yeah. Yep.
Remember the milkman the fittest person on the planet would run up and down the street with his milk bottles and delivering milk bottles to everyone's front doors. And
Yeah. And we used to trust and put the money under the mat for
yep,
the same for the bread man. We used to have a
yep,
bread man that used to come and
yep,
deliver the
absolutely, the bread
fielder's
man.
bread on the So the
Yep.
milkman was super fit. The bread man would come along, and then the garbos who would run along the side of the truck.
That's right. And they would use your garbage lid because it was the old metal garbage lid, and they'd frisbee it back onto your front yard. Do you remember that? They used to make so much noise, these guys. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but
they
how
would.
fit were they?
I know. And they'd ride along on the back of the truck. Can't do that anymore.
Yeah, like you'd run up and down. I don't know how long. I mean, and we used to stick everything in that bin. I mean, these days we've got a yellow bin and a green bin and a red bin, and
Yeah.
you used to have these tiny little metal bins that collected once a week, and you managed to put everything
Everything
in
in
there.
there.
Yeah, I mean,
How did that work?
I know. And these days you need all three bins or a fourth bin
Yeah,
in some
yeah,
places, and you
yeah.
still complain and say, "Oh, I can't fit everything in there." I mean, I guess we used to go down to the backyard incinerator and burn everything else if it didn't
That's
fit in
right.
the bin.
Oh
But
my goodness.
yeah, so bread man, milkman, Garbo, the dunny man,
Yeah,
Kaylee
wow.
ironing things onto,
On the
gosh,
floor.
on the
Do you know what I
floor.
remember? I was thinking about before when we were talked about doing this particular podcast. I'm old enough to remember when, and this would have been in the 70s, early 70s, I think, we went 10 pin bowling, and it was actually physically someone's job to reset the pins up.
Is that
Before
right?
there was a machine, there was actually there'd be someone up the back of the the alley, and they would be somewhere in there, wherever they were. And then once you'd bowled your ball down and they'd all gone, that person would pop out of somewhere and put your 10 pins back up and then quickly jump out of the way before you threw another ball down.
That's
That was
a
a
career
job.
choice. That is a career choice, isn't it?
Like, I think they were called pin setters or pin collectors or something.
That is genuinely one of those jobs that you say, you know, I think I can see a future in this, because how on earth is that ever going to change?
Yeah, and you had to fight the overwhelming urge to throw a ball down there while he was setting up, because you just it just became a target.
Did Kaylee ever do that once, maybe?
No, Kaylee didn't do that. Kaylee couldn't. But I was so little when I remember this that I couldn't even barely lift the ball. So, yeah. But you really wanted to bowl one down there.
When you look at some of those, and we mentioned the tea lady, but there used to be typing pools and switchboard operators that just, you know, can you imagine kids now thinking, oh, there used to be someone sitting, and predominantly women, that's not being sexist at all, because that's just how it was. And sitting there, and they'd have the little plug, and you'd plug you'd connect someone through to someone else. And I know that was probably after our time, or before our time.
No, it was. That was one of my.
You were everything, weren't you?
I was one of those, and it was it would have been like 1980, and I worked for this advertising company in North Sydney, and they had one of the old Sylvester switchboards. If you don't know what a Sylvester switchboard is, like Google it and you'll see. So it is the one that's got the cables and all the holes. Yeah. So you've got 2 rows. Let me try and explain. You've got 2 rows of cables that are retractable. And a call would come through. You have a board in front of you, and a little red light would light up. So you would put the back cable into the hole where the little red light was, and then you could answer the call, and you go, hello, whatever, you know, this is Kaylee. And then they go, can I speak to Mr. Smith? And so you'd grab the equivalent front cord, drag it out, and plug it into Mr. Smith's extension. And it was... Like I remember it was old even when I had that job, and thinking, oh my gosh. And I remember one day I answered a call, and the person didn't know who they wanted to speak to. So while I was thinking about who to put them through to, I grabbed the front cord, getting ready to put it into an extension. And I leaned back on my chair, and I put the cord into my mouth, and it hit a filling, and I got an electric shock, and I went flying off the chair. I don't know how I didn't die, but anyway, I ended up on the floor. I can remember having this electric shock and shaking, and anyway, you only did that once. But yeah, there you go.
Great party trick, but yeah, you just do that once, and that's probably enough.
Yeah,
probably
but typing
enough.
pools and everything.
Typing pools.
Secretary. You can't even say the word secretary anymore. That's not an acceptable term.
No, and it's like all those, like you don't have. I know air hostesses. You can't say air host. What are they now called? Cabin crew. Is it just cabin crew?
Yeah. My mum was an air hostie. Yep.
Yeah.
On the old DC3s, and back then, you couldn't do that job if you were married. So mum.
Is it right?
Yep. Once you got married, you had to give up the job. So mum flew with CAA and the old DC3 for about a year before she got married to Dad, and then she had to give it up.
The PR Guy helps businesses tell their story clearly and credibly. From PR to podcast production and marketing, it's communication without the spin. Visit theprguy.com.au.
Yeah. All those jobs that, remember as a kid, you would take photographs and you'd go and get your film developed.
Oh, yeah.
And you'd have no idea what photographs you'd taken, but you'd still have to wait. There was like a 48-hour express photographic thing, and you'd still cut
otherwise it was a week.
Head. Yeah, that's right. And you'd take it to the chemist or whatever. So there would have been someone somewhere just, processing all those rolls of holiday happy snaps and whatever else was on those rolls, and I'm sure they got entertainment out.
Shots. Yeah, and they seem to disappear overnight, and they... and again, like we talked about in one of our other podcasts about your whole story being put on the back of a postcard, some stranger in a shop seeing all your photos.
There would have been some photographs that they would have been talking about, I'm sure.
I'm sure they would
as
have
well.
alerted the police.
Yeah, there would have been. But I had to learn how to develop film as a young journo. That was one of
Yeah.
the
Did you?
stock and trade things that you had to learn, where you'd go and take photographs, and you'd go into a dark room, and you need to know how to process the film and develop your photographs. But to do that as a job, 7 days a week or whatever it was, to go and do everyone's little, here we are at the zoo, and here we are at the school excursion, and here's a shot of mum and dad that mum and dad didn't know I took.
Yeah, but you'd get, depending on how many photos you took, whether it was 12 or 24, you'd get your photo, you would have had to have paid for it, and you'd find out half of them were blurry.
Yeah, that's the one.
So-
Yep.
And and it's amazing when you think about it. But you talked to, you're a journo. What about print setters and typesetters and all those jobs that are in the media industry that are not there anymore?
All gone. I remember as a young journalist, we used to have, the offset printers that used to do this, and compositors and all those sort of careers.
And proofreaders?
Proofreaders. Compositing was, for those that don't know, when computers first came in, and this was a hyperloop for a lot of people in the late 70s, early 80s, where bromide, shiny pieces of paper, and they used to wax them, and then these guys used to actually cut them out, and you'd lay them down to, in the form that, someone that designed the paper. Before then, there were guys using hot metal that used to slide in pieces of hot metal or the characters on a piece of metal and put them into big wooden boxes, and used to take an impression of those with ink to create papers. So as the media evolved, all these positions have now gone by the wayside, to the point where these days, of course, everyone is using ChatGPT or anything like that to believe that they are actually journalists, I think, and just write what they... So there's even proofreaders, sub-editors, all those sort of things in my industry that have now gone by the wayside. Camera operators.
But going back to before, to your industry, but before our time, before newspapers, there were town criers.
Oh, of course.
Do you remember?
Who doesn't love a good town crier?
They'd shake a bell and they'd announce what was happening, and that was... The last time I saw a town crier was old Sydney Town back in the 80s, and they had a town crier that used to walk around. It's like, wow, look at that guy, and he had a big bellowing voice, and he would yell out, shake his bell and yell out what was happening.
And of course, when there's any big royal announcement, they still have that sort of, the royal sort of town crier that rings the bell, and it's all big medical spectacle. And that was a transmission of information back in the day. That every town had to have that sort of information at hand. So they had that role. Unlike, and we're not going back too far. Did you ever work at a video shop as well?
I didn't. I loved the video shop. I frequented it a lot in the 80s, but video, the guy who was in the video store that knew just about every video that he had, you just go in there and go, have you got this? And he'd go, yep, it's over there.
Yeah, that's it. And I had a friend whose sole job, because the video manager, and it was, I can't remember which one it was, but their job was to put the cassette tapes in and make sure they were all rewound.
Oh, rewound, of course.
Yeah.
Of course, that was a thing.
That was their job. Like, some of us worked at Macca's or KFC or something, and their job was to go to the video shop, and they would work, it was a Saturday night or a Monday or whatever it was, and they just had to go through all the returns and make sure they're all rewound for the next person.
But remember, though, that you used to get fined if you didn't rewind it. There'd be they'd put some note on your card on the computer, and you'd be fined 20 cents or something if you didn't rewind your video back to the beginning for the next person.
That's probably how they paid my mate. Actually, mate, you want to make sure that, because this is the only way you're going to get paid. So, good luck to him. I don't even know what he went into doing, but I'm sure it wasn't anything to do with video.
No. What about encyclopedia salesmen?
The Funkin' Wagonals. The Funkin'
Wagonals. Or even any door-to-door salesman, vacuum cleaner salesman used to come to the door and knock on the door and try and flog a vacuum cleaner to mum.
Oh, we never got a vacuum cleaner salesman, but the Funkin' Wagnalls or the Britannica or
Yeah,
the
the
whatever they were.
Encyclopedia Britannica, I think it was. Oh, the World
Yeah.
Book Encyclopedia we had.
Oh yeah. Once again,
Very
we didn't.
flash.
We didn't have encyclopedia. We weren't that flash at our place. But
Yeah.
what we did have, we had an Avon lady.
Oh, yes. The
Did
Avon
you?
lady.
Did you ever? Do you remember the Avon lady? Or did you?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That
my
was.
mum everyone's mum used to look forward to the Avon lady coming and she could buy more stuff.
Yeah, it was. It was always the thing. My mum used to
Mhm.
always, and she didn't knock on the, and it was quite acceptable to just come hawking at people's houses and
Absolutely.
flogging it in encyclopedia
Anything.
vacuums or Avon.
It
And
was
Avon
actually
was.
exciting to see who was going to come knocking on the door when you were young.
Were you allowed to answer the door when they came, or did you have to leave that for mum?
No, we were allowed to. Yeah,
Yeah, there you
yeah,
go. See, that's
yeah.
our thing. Travel agents. Now, you tell me, are travel agents a dying thing or not?
I don't
Because we
think
can.
so. I
Don't
think
think
there's
so.
still no, because we talked about it before. I went to Spain last year and I used a travel agent. I haven't for years used a travel agent, but on this particular trip, because there were so many components to it, I went and saw a lady at Flight Centre, and she
Mm,
organised the whole thing for me, and it was
yeah,
fabulous.
I get it. So many of our friends now are just organising. They're using AI, which can be a bit dangerous, but
Yeah,
to organise their own trip and bypassing that whole sector
yeah,
altogether.
yeah.
I don't know whether there's a benefit in that. I don't know, but
I think it depends on where you're going and the travel agent's knowledge of where you're going. It can
yeah,
be, it can be beneficial if they've got inside knowledge that you're not going to find on the computer. And yeah, so certainly in my case, it was good. I'm glad I did.
yeah, the little corner shop man too. And I know you and I remember fondly Mr. Perry, who
Mr. Perry.
used to have the
Yeah,
corner shop. They're few and far between now. And that little the man or lady that used to know the family and all those sort of things, they're long gone, aren't they?
you take your 5 cents and get your 5 cents worth of mixed lollies, and you'd get 20 lollies for that.
Oh yeah, and that probably leads us on to another sort of line of discussion about the things that aren't not necessarily the jobs, but the things that just aren't with us anymore. And that whole you go in for, and I know 20 cents is not 20 cents anymore, but kids can't just go in and ask for I want two of those and three of those
Mhm.
and one of those
No,
anymore, right?
no, you can't. Yeah,
So that
can't do that
corner shop,
anymore.
the milk bars, even like I know there's one or there's a couple in Sydney, the local cinemas and even the drive-in. I know there's still one drive-in,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they proliferated Sydney there for a while.
Yeah, and I think it was probably before our time, but back in the drive-ins in the 60s where someone would come to your car and bring you food.
Oh,
You would,
really?
yeah, like someone would come up and hand you, you'd order something and then, I don't know how it worked, but they'd come up and deliver it to your car. Yeah, which could end
And
badly.
and I was talking about this to some friends months and months and months ago, and there is still a drive-in in Sydney. So if you're living sort of
Blacktown?
somewhere else in the world, let us know if there's still a drive-in in your town or
Yeah,
city. But it was so much fun, and I so want to take my grandson to one before
yes.
it eventually closes. But it was teetering there for a little while, where in the late 70s, early 80s, the only way they could get people in was having some fairly raunchy films on, and that was the advent of the beta and the VHS tape, which didn't see the light of day after that. But
Yeah,
handwritten letters are making a comeback, so I hear that
yeah,
people are now just starting to write letters again, and that's something that fell off the perch as well, wasn't
yeah, absolutely. And I think if you can get it delivered, good luck, because
it?
wow, yeah, just trying to get mail delivered is pretty letters delivered. But yeah, that's an old dying art. But we're talking about the milk bar, and some of the things that are not around anymore or not the same are. I remember the wagon wheel being heaps bigger and thicker.
It was
It
big.
was, or was it just us? Was it? It was bigger, wasn't it?
No, everything was bigger, and that's not some euphemism for anything else other than like your Big Mac, which is sort of like how
Mm,
big now? Like it would fall
yeah,
apart in your hand. Your wagon wheel was massive. All those
golden rough,
things.
I'm sure, was thicker and bigger.
Yeah,
than it is
peppermint
now.
patties or whatever they were. All those
Yeah.
things were, even your show bag when you went to your, whether it was
Yeah.
the Ekka or the Sydney Royal Issue, they had heaps of stuff in there, and they were things that used to be called sample bags because they cost next to nothing, and back in the day they were given away free because they were
Yeah.
samples. So as you would then go and
Yeah.
test drive, whatever it was, and then potentially go and buy it. Now, kids are spending, 20, 30, 40, $50 on
Oh,
a
I know.
bag.
On a bag. It's
It,
ridiculous.
it
Yeah.
It's crazy. And you talked about your time with the sort of radio station. How many people still have records and cassettes, do you reckon?
Apart from, like, you have your diehard people that have collections,
Hmm.
but other than that, no, I don't have any. I didn't keep any of my records. I
You'd
didn't
have
keep.
you'd have a mixtape from an old flame, wouldn't you? Surely on a cassette. Do people? Do
I didn't know where to play it. I think I digitized all of that as well. There are companies now you can take all that to, and they digitize it for you.
Yeah, remember the mixtape? The mixtape was always
When you say mixtape, do you mean like of different songs, or is a mixtape what
Yes.
you used to record yourself?
No, it used to record different songs, and you used to either
Off
give
the
it to
radio,
a
yeah.
girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever. And I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes you played it in the car, but you'd have that unrequited love that you'd say, "Oh, I think I'm going to give them this mixtape of all these favourite songs," which they probably didn't know you. You thought, well, but that brings me to listening to the radio and hitting the press record button, hoping that the DJ you got the timing just right to do that tape. Did you ever do that and listen to
No.
Casey on a Sunday
Oh, yeah,
night
yeah, I
and
did
the
listen to
American Top
Casey.
40, and
Yeah.
you'd think, hang on, I really know this song's coming up, and as soon as I do, I'm going to press play record, and there you go, and you record that,
Yeah.
and then you press stop. Oh,
Yeah.
those days I
I
miss.
can remember all of that. We talked about photo albums and things like that aren't. If you do have them, they're somewhere in the garage. But checkbooks.
Oh,
No one
yes.
has a checkbook anymore.
Are checks still legal tender?
Yes, they are, because I received one a few weeks ago as a payment for something. I received a check, and my bank doesn't accept checks.
No.
It's all digital.
So what
and-
happens with that?
So I had to go back to the person who had sent it to me and said, you need to electronically transfer the funds. And they said, okay, well, you need to give us the check back. I said, can't I just tear it up? Can't you just cancel it? And they're like, no, we need to physically get it back. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is so
Really?
1970s. Yeah.
So you still have the ability to write a check. It's
Yeah.
still legal currency, but a bank will not accept it.
Some banks won't
Some
accept
banks.
them. Some not yeah. I think all the big four banks will
Right,
still accept
okay.
them, but
Okay.
my bank won't accept them. It's all digital.
Wow.
So I've got it on the magnet on the fridge. I've got to send it back. Get around to
Yeah, okay. I'm sure if there was an extra dollar in it for processing fees, which is a wonderful thing, and cash is probably starting to come back into itself. But do you remember as a kid, this is something I used to do, and you talk about sometimes, kids say, "Oh, I'm bored. I've got nothing to do. We haven't got a skate park at our local thing, and there's not enough stuff." And we probably didn't have any of that stuff. I remember used to watching the little dot on the TV when you turn the TV off and the little
at night.
diode thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
at night.
Yeah.
And you'd watch
And
it.
it would
and
stay
think,
there for
"Oh,
ages until it finally faded.
Yeah, that's it. Which TV? I mean, these days it's 24/7. You can watch whatever you want, whenever you want, and you search
From anywhere
and
in the world.
from
Yeah.
anywhere in the world on any device, whether it's your phone, whether it's your watch, whether it's a tablet. And of course, TV used to shut down at 11:30 or midnight, and you used to have the national anthem. And I remember the little, it was Channel 7 in Sydney, used to have the kangaroo putting the Joey into bed, and
Yes.
that was it. But
Wow.
it was
Well,
the
radio
end.
stations did as well. They closed down at midnight, and then whoever the breakfast announcer was, when they have to come in the morning and turn all the equipment on
Oh,
to start the radio station again for breakfast.
gosh. And it was television as going along that path. You'd have to wait. There'd be movie of the week or whatever it was, and you'd see what the movies were coming up next Sunday night. And so you'd be waiting all week for that movie that was going to appear next Sunday night or this Saturday night at the movies. And you think, wow. But these days, tablets, phones, whatever it was, it's embarrassment of riches.
Gosh, so many things have changed, haven't they?
Yeah. Fixed phones. Imagine having that
yeah.
conversation with that boyfriend or whatever, and you had like a a 3-foot phone cord. You couldn't escape anywhere.
Yeah, and you'd sit on
Yeah.
the phone for hours and hours. I mean,
Does
the old
anyone
rotary phone,
does anyone still have a fixed phone?
a fixed phone. Yeah, I know. We don't have a fixed phone anymore.
Yeah,
I'm sure there'll be people listening who do still have it, but
I don't know. Don't know. All these things and more. Thank goodness at least house parties weren't documented on social media. And you and I got away with way too much that can never be sort of held against us in a court.
Absolutely.
Of law. Yeah. Hey, you know what?
What? Are we out of time again?
I think we're out of time.
All right.
It sounds like a line from Back to the Future, isn't it? Wasn't that the number plate? Out of time?
Out of time, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'm going.
See you next time. Cheers,
See ya.
buddy.
Bye.
The views and opinions expressed on the Big 60 are personal and reflect those of the hosts and guests. They do not represent the views or positions of any affiliated organisations or companies. This podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for guidance on any personal matters.
Oh, and before we go, let's give credit where credit is due. Kaylee Harris and I came up with all the genius content for this week's episode. Our producer, Nick Abood, well, he keeps the lights on and makes sure we don't accidentally upload a cat video instead of a podcast. So thanks for keeping us on track, Nick. Nick?